Uh, okay, thank you very much, Tony. Nice to meet you, and nice to know that those chapter reports where I sort of stay up until just before midnight, sort of thinking, I've got to write in, that it was worth it because somebody's obviously enjoyed it. So thank you. So what I'd like to suggest, so I'm talking about the world outside and the world inside. And we're living in very, as the Chinese used to say, we're living in very interesting times. So what my suggestion is, this is kind of like a format. As far as I'm aware, the Buddha never mentions Zoom. Yeah, the Buddha, I've read quite a lot of the Pali Canon, and he doesn't mention Zoom conference calls or, you know, sort of the Wi-Fi being unstable, or anything like that. Now, that's not to say that the Buddha didn't use those things. It's just they're not mentioned. But here we are with my Wi-Fi possibly being unstable. So let's just take a moment to connect in. So we just kind of take our awareness inside. So I've not frozen. I'm just not saying anything. I'm just taking in that here I am on this, in this 21st century, on this technology. Kind of having a broad awareness of all the different people. I think I heard somebody say in the introduction that they were from Manchester, and that it rains a lot. And I remember that, having grown up there. I also, on the call, I noticed this Jayaraja, who I was ordained with 27 years ago. And I think I heard somebody say that they're in the south of France. That may well just be that they were hoping they were in the south of France. But anyway, so there we have just, this is where we are. We're in our own room and we're on a call with lots of people. Just let that sink in. And just recently, just very recently, we did the salutation to the shrine. Do you remember how that felt? Do you remember how it was in your body as you chanted that? What images might have come to mind? And then we did the refs and precepts. So there we are. You know, here I am with a group, living with friends at the moment who aren't Buddhist, and I wondered whether they would hear my chanting and sort of think, oh, he's doing that strange Buddhist stuff again. But wherever we are in all our different situations and circumstances, we've come, we're here. How amazing. So what has brought us here tonight? A longing to kind of grow as a human being, I imagine. So much of modern culture is designed to distract us. So one of the things about Buddhism is it's about not being distracted. You know, I don't know whether you know what's called you'll probably be familiar with the three poisons, you know, greed, hatred, and delusion. Sometimes there's the five poisons: greed, hatred, delusion, conceit, and distractedness. You know? That's my big poison. That's the poison that I need to work with. Distractedness. So And one of the big distractions for me is reading the news, especially when COVID first came and there was the lockdown. Do you remember that? 3 months ago, was it 3 months ago? March 23rd, lockdown. I happened to be visiting some friends. I thought the lockdown might be coming, and I thought these would be good friends to be locked down with, and living in a beautiful environment, spacious house, beautiful garden. And I thought, if I'm going to get locked down, that'd be a good place to be locked down. Because actually, normally or in recent times, I've been home free. So I've been living out of my car, traveling and teaching. So I thought, if I'm going to get locked down somewhere beautiful. So we got locked down, and then the world is turned upside down. Do you remember how it was? You know, what thoughts went on for you? What feelings? Do you remember your inner world? You know, for me, there was kind of I think my distraction at the time was wanting to read as much as possible about what was happening. What was happening in the world, what was going on with COVID, how other countries were faring, and how our government was dealing with it. Yeah. I felt in a very privileged position because A, I was staying in a beautiful place, B, I had enough food, and C, I had a garden. In fact, I've got the moors outside, so just beyond the garden, they open onto Dartmoor. So I did feel a bit ridiculously spoiled. You know, if I think about some people in other situations, like imagine being in London, living in a tower block with no balcony, maybe with somebody that you find difficult, maybe with half a dozen people you find difficult. Yeah. So there I was, sort of thinking, well, I'm okay. But it also felt in that kind of, for me, in that sort of sense of feeling that I'm okay, there was also a sense of sadness as well. Sadness that other people maybe weren't faring so well, and there was not much I could do about it. Fortunately, I found I had enough money in the bank, although all my work was cancelled immediately. I felt kind of quite easy, as I say, because there was enough food in the house. I had enough money in the bank to see me through a few months without any income. So it's good to remember that time. And thinking about people around the world. And then, you know, there was all the whole, do you remember, I don't know whether you even read the news, but how, you know, the numbers started to go up in the number of people who were being affected by COVID all around the world, and you had different governments responding in different ways. You had some countries that were responding, say Mongolia, who've had no deaths. Well, you've got a state, like in India, you've got a state of Kerala, which has had 19 deaths, got a population of 33 million. So different countries were responding in different ways. And I was fearful for some of the countries that I care about. I've spent, my partner's Brazilian, I've spent time in Brazil, and what I could see was a chaotic government and lots of poverty and lots of fear. So there's this world within. And the world within is connected to the world without. So there's not much I can do about Brazil, except maybe if I'm in a position to support friends or, you know, sort of family members of my partner, Or say in India, I'm very connected to India. I kind of worked for Karuna for 7 years, well, 9 years actually, running the Karuna appeals. So when things started to break out in India, I was very conscious of how it would impact that country. You know, the lockdown in India was announced with 4 hours notice. So that didn't give people time to stockpile toilet paper or pasta. Do you remember all that? Or booze. So, and some of them who rely on daily wages decided that they weren't going to survive in the metropolis of Mumbai or Delhi or Nagpur even. And so they set off walking, literally hundreds of miles, to return to their villages, where at least they hoped to be with family and to be able to survive. So again, the fact that I know people in India, I was able to kind of send some money over there. But still, it's a small drop in the ocean of the great amount of suffering that there is in the world. We're probably all familiar with the first noble truth: life is suffering. And most of us spend a lot of time not taking that on board. Life is suffering. It's not that life is just suffering, but it's kind of like in trying to avoid suffering, we kind of continue it. But somehow, in opening the heart to suffering, we develop compassion. We open our heart to our own suffering and being able to acknowledge it. And also, one thing I find that helps in acknowledging it is being able to keep perspective. So not losing perspective. So that is not getting lost in the moment of this feels uncomfortable, this feels unpleasant. But being able to sort of think, oh, I'm just feeling uncomfortable at the moment, and these are the conditions that give rise to that. So, one of the things I find, and here we are with this group of people. Some of us are wearing these around our necks, so it's kind of like we're pretty serious about this Buddhist lock. But there's probably people here who are equally serious, who aren't wearing one of these scarves around our necks. But 2,500 years after the Buddha lived, here we are, sort of our lives supported, inspired, uplifted by the teaching of the Buddha. And for me, it's kind of, I love the simplicity of Buddhism. And there's the particular 2 verses that I often find give me great faith, which are the first 2 verses of the Dhammapada. So the Dhammapada, Dhamma means truth or teaching or reality, teaching of the Buddha or reality. And Pada means something like footstep or walking. So walking in the Dharma. And so the first set of verses in that are called the twin verses. So, and the Buddha says, experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, created by mind. Speak or act with an impure mind, and suffering follows, as the wheel follows the hoof of the ox. Let me say that again. Experience is preceded by mind, led by mind, created by mind. Speak or act with an impure mind, and suffering follows, like the wheel follows the hoof of the ox. Experience is led by mind, preceded by mind. Is mind created? Speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness follows, like a never departing shadow. So speak or act with a pure mind, and happiness follows, like our never departing shadow. Wow. So is that true? So it's kind of like my experience of that is, if I try and act with as much integrity and as much awareness of my intention, and with as much imagination and perspective as possible, and act with a skillful mind, my experience has shown me that happiness does follow. Which doesn't mean, it does mean making sure I don't fall into patterns of blaming other people. So it's very easy to blame other people. It's very easy to find excuses for being in a painful state of mind or a negative state of mind. And there's also one of the things in Buddhism, there's this idea, let's say, get this the right way around. In Christianity, there's the idea of righteous anger. You know? So the famous story of righteous anger is Jesus chasing the moneylenders out of the temple. You know? Now in Buddhism, there is no idea of righteous anger. In fact, the Buddha goes as far as to say, now this is pretty extreme. And so it's been passed down. One of the things about the Buddhist teaching is they're passed down through the oral tradition. So I'll tell the story and then I'll see if I can sort of imagine how this came down. So the Buddha says, this is what it says in the tradition. If you are set upon by bandits who saw you limb from limb with a two-handed saw, and you feel anger or rage towards them, you are not a disciple of mine. So it's kind of like, oh my God, you know. If you're set upon by a group of bandits and they saw you limb from limb with a two-handed saw, you know, you're not a disciple of mine. So you can imagine. So how I imagine that, okay, it's come down through the oral tradition, but I imagine some guys saying sitting around with the Buddha, and a monk saying, oh yeah, he was set upon by such a thing, because there were plenty of bandits around back in those days. And the Buddha saying, and they're saying, well, surely if you get angry at that point, isn't that okay? Because they kind of, they beat him. And the Buddha said, nope. And he says, yeah, but what about if they kind of beat him and robbed him? And, it's kind of like, nope. And then, yeah, but how about if they kind of, no. And then the Buddha says, look, even if they got a two-handed saw and started sawing your leg off, and you start feeling angry, you're not practicing. What you've got to practice is, sort of seeing the circumstances that have given rise to it and work with your mind. Because if you don't work with your mind, you are going to find that you're suffering. So that's how I imagine the story came about. Now, obviously, I haven't managed to track it down on YouTube where the Buddha is giving this talk, but, YouTube is, it's got something like uploaded 6 million videos a day, so, you know, maybe one day we'll find it. But in the meantime, there is a modern day equivalent, which is where the Dalai Lama, who you know, was in Dharamsala, and one day he recognized this monk who used to be one of his physicians. And this physician of his had been he'd been in prison in Tibet for about 18 years. And the Buddha says to him, said, so were you ever frightened when you were in prison? And the monk sort of said, well, yes, Your Holiness, I was frightened. The Buddha, Dalai Lama, said to him, so you were frightened after all your practice? And he says, yes, Your Holiness, I was frightened that I would lose compassion for the men who were torturing me. Yeah. I was frightened that I would lose compassion for the men who were torturing me. Wow. Can you imagine having such robustness of mind? Yeah. I get upset if there isn't a banana for breakfast. You know, so it's kind of like, I get upset if we run out of chamomile tea. You know, it's kind of like, what am I like? You know, so, you know, so, you know, that kind of, no, it's not that so, it's not like the Buddha is saying something that is impossible, or that this monk is saying something that is, you know, that, oh, it's only exceptional monks who can do that. They are talking about the capacity of the human mind and the qualities of discipline that we require to meet our inner worlds. Now, one of the things I really love about Buddhism is this, you know, the mixing of the historical and the mythic, and trying to translate that. Now, so if I imagine, sometimes I imagine, what would the Buddha be talking about now? Yeah. Would he talk about Mara now? Yeah. So there's the very famous, you know, the Buddha sitting beneath the Bodhi tree and being, you know, attacked by the forces of Mara, you know, so attacked by doubt, attacked by hatred, attacked by lust, attacked by pride. You know? So Mara tries to undermine him in many different ways. And what happens is the Buddha sits with them and he transforms them. You know, when the weapons are coming towards them, they're transformed into flowers. Now, I'd like you to see this metaphorically, not literally, metaphorically. So in our own mind, when we notice that we've reacted to a comment somebody has made on Facebook, we notice what's going on inside us. Yeah? Yes, am I losing perspective? Can I maintain equanimity? Can I feel compassion and awareness for the reactivity that is going on within me? Can I then start to imagine the perspective of the other person? What might they be saying? What might be important to them? Can I make connection with them? Can I make connection with them based on loving kindness, on metta? So one of the other things that I really like about Buddhism is the precepts. It's kind of like, as I say, Buddhism, it seems to me to be quite simple. It's kind of like these first two verses of the Dhammapada, you know, is my heart, am I acting with a skillful or a pure heart? And being able to acknowledge when I'm not, and being able to meet myself with kindness, with curiosity, with compassion. One of the ways I do that is I sort of am able to acknowledge my unskillfulness, and I kind of, it's almost like I imagine Tara sort of saying, okay, Jayaraja, yeah, you are a blockhead, but you're still livable. You are a blockhead, but still livable. And that she understands the conditions that have given rise to that. And it's kind of like, I aspire then to do better. So, and in the precepts, you've got this, the precepts are not like rules of right and wrong. I love the fact that the precepts are called training principles. So I undertake, this is what the, we don't say it in English, but when we say, Anatipata Veremani Sikhaparang Samadhyami, we say, I undertake the training principle to abstain from harming living beings. I undertake the training principle. I am not expected to be perfect. I shouldn't expect myself to be perfect. I am training. Yeah? I undertake the training principle to abstain from taking the not given. Yeah? So, and then having, it's not kind of like thou shalt not steal. It's not black and white in that way. It's a training principle. Now, it's useful to have the negative framing of that, but for me, what is important, and also one of the things I do to review my own mind is think, if I'm feeling unhappy, I look to see, have I been unethical? Or where have I been unethical? Or where have I not noticed what my mind is doing? So having, if I then notice that actually maybe I have been, and sometimes I do notice, oh yeah, I'm feeling a bit miserable, and it's kind of due to this unskillfulness or this particular thought pattern. But it's more often than not, I think it's because I've not cultivated the positive precepts enough. So the positive precepts with deeds of loving kindness. Again, it's open-ended. It's kind of unlimited with deeds of loving kindness. So it can be useful to reflect on your day of what have I done today that has been kind? What have I done today that has been an expression of beauty? What do I regularly do that is an expression of kindness? So creating positive habits of kindness. So, and then with open-handed generosity, I purify my body. So can you be more generous? Yeah. And noticing the mind when it is not so generous, noticing the mind when it takes offense, noticing the mind when it doesn't give people the benefit of the doubt. That's a really valuable thing to give people, is the benefit of the doubt. And the Buddha wouldn't have, he might have said this nowadays. Instead of talking about Mara, he might have said, bestow love on the unlovable parts of ourself. So know that there are unlovable parts of ourselves on which we need to meet with loving kindness. So I think that's the end of my time, because we're going to go into groups now, I think. Is that right? Is that Jalila? And I said I would be less than 30 minutes. So, so my question to you is, or a kind of curiosity is, which areas do you need to bestow love on within you? Which areas do you need to bestow love on within yourself? Thank you.